Hey guys, Nanman here. We're going to be doing another edition of Modern Meta Breakdown here. So we've been getting some good feedback, some people have been giving some suggestions, and we're going to start kind of incorporating some different stuff. I know if people want to see some of the decks in action, a lot of times they are played over on Modern Magic Mondays on our stream. So I'll do my best to try to link up the VODs for corresponding decks in the description and stuff for you guys to check out. But another good way is if you want to just check out weekly Modern coverage, check that out, YouTube and twitch.tv/Modern Magic Mondays. Season number 5 is almost done, so make sure you guys are keeping your eyes open for the top 8 for that. But like I said, a lot of people have been posting up about different decks. Don't worry guys, I hear you, I know what you want to see. We're going to be picking one of these from this week, and then I have a different deck we're going to talk about that is not going to be one of these 3 for next week. I already have an idea going into it what I want to be talking about for next week, but I've been holding off certain decks. I've been going through the list. We had some L's, we had some Dredge, a lot of decks that are kind of running around here. One of these decks is a little bit more fringe, doesn't see as much play. So I figure that would be a good one to bring about after a more common deck like Dredge. So, sorry Affinity, I'm not going to be getting any love this week. Left 2 more. Decisions. It's tough. I mean, a lot of these ones, have different merits, different enjoyments out of it, but we're going for Madcap style, guys. This deck has a couple of different names. Madcap Imperium, Madcap Moon, Blue Moon. Like, there's a couple different variants on what you want to call it. But that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. What is the deck? Why do people play this deck? Kind of what's it all about? So let's pull up our list. Trying to make the list a little bit bigger for you guys. I know there were some descriptions about how it was harder to read. So let me just actually add in our Madcap image too, so you guys have that the whole time that we go over stuff, so you can always kind of look back at it and go, oh, okay, I know exactly what that card does. This all makes sense here. Dun, 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 dun. Alright, our Madcap experiment. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Then, Madcap experiment deals damage to you equal to the number of cards revealed this way. Yee, that sounds kind of painful. Why do we want to deal with that? Well, it's because we're searching up our Platinum Imperium. So that's kind of where you might hear the name Madcap Imperium come from, because we find this 8-cost, 8/8 artifact golem who says your life total cannot change. So instead of taking damage off the Madcap experiment, for example, this Platinum Imperium is on the bottom, guess what? You're not going to lose any life off of it. So that's pretty sweet. So that's the big thing, is this list here was running 3. 2 of our Platinum Imperiums, find that up, and an 8/8's pretty tough to deal with. You can see Madcap experiment only costs 4 sorcery speed to have to worry about. So what other creatures is this deck running? Is there anything else that it can find off Madcap experiment? No. The whole point is to be able to find the Platinum Imperium and go for that route and be able to kill people with that and not take any damage, to just say, here's 4 mana, now I have an 8/8. Pretty sweet. It is kind of a control based deck, if you will. You see a playset of Snapcaster Mage in there. Makes a lot of sense that you try to run that. Singleton, Pian Kieran of Nalarar, 4 mana, 2/2, makes 2/1/1 Thopters, and you can pay 3 and sack an artifact and deal 2 damage to target creature or player. So there is that aspect. You can fling those Thopters and just having extra blockers that way. This list was running 3 Vendilion Click, so you can flash this guy in as a threat on the end step there as a 3/1 flyer, so he does have evasion. Also, you can look at your opponent's hand, get knowledge about what's in their hand, and you may choose. So that is the big thing. You do not have to do this. You look at their hand, write down every card in their hand, and say, cool, you can keep all those because I know exactly what you have, and I have ways to deal with all of these. But you look at their hand, you can choose a non-land card from it, and that player may put that card on the bottom and draw a card. So if you're like, well, oh, they have a really good card, I don't have an answer for that, let's just put that on the bottom of your library. Don't you worry about that. But then they get to draw a card, so there could be some potential. Sometimes, you know, newer players will always make you put a card back and draw a card, which can be beneficial for those players, so keep that in mind. But I talked about it being known as the Madcap Moon or Blue Moon. Blue Moon was around for a while as a kind of fusion of a prison-based deck and a control-based deck. Works really well in very specific metas. Otherwise, it's kind of just like mediocre. Like, it's because it's trying to do two different things, and it's kind of sometimes hard to mesh up. So let's talk a little bit about the land base, you know, before we go into the spells, which is more important here. See, 9 islands. You're like, wow, that's a lot of islands. Well, yes, we need a lot of basics in here. Single mountain, desolate lighthouse, got that loot effect. You know, doesn't see very much play in a lot of decks, but still works out pretty well in this. 4 polluted, 4 scalding tarn, 3 steam vents, and 1 sulfur falls. Really, you can view all of these as mountains. Yes, they tap for blue as well, but that is not something that you have to worry about when you have Blood Moon out. And we've talked about the prison-based decks before, and we talked about the Sun and Moon deck, which if you guys missed that video, oh, hi Annie, you missed that video, you know, for our previous modern meta breakdown. But Blood Moon non-basic lands are mountains, so there is that hateful card. There's no way to kind of like cheat it into play. You're not going to play Simian Spirit Guide or anything like that, but it's just like a, hey, on curve, cool, I've got some counter magic to deal with what you've got on that turn 1, turn 2 kind of thing. And then, hey, guess what? All those 3-color base decks that are running around, you're going to be feeling pretty sad. It does have 2 Cryptic in their list. You know, 2, 3, great, depending on how you want to run things. 2 seems very fine for this. You know, you do need 3 blue available to cast it. It does have kind of the multi-mode ability for it. If you guys aren't familiar with Control, it hasn't been running around. I have not highlighted Control yet in Modern Meta Breakdown. Wanted to do kind of a, you know, just to test the waters on our Control discussion, if you will. Cryptic Command, one of the best control or counter spells in Modern, because of the versatility of it. So counter target spell, you can do that. You can return target permanent to its owner's hand. Includes lands, by the way. It says permanent, doesn't say non-land permanent. So you can bounce those, enchantments. You can be able to bounce planeswalkers. The other one, tap all creatures your opponent controls. So start of combat. Okay, Cryptic Command, tap all creatures you control. You are not attacking me with anybody this turn. Works really well against those go wide strategies that we've talked about previously. And then just draw a card. So I'm paying 4 mana, countering something that you want to do, drawing a card, or hey, returning my Snapcaster to my hand so I can use them again later. You know, because it can be something you control. It doesn't always have to be what your opponent controls. So that is a nice kind of option available to you. Electrolyzed in here. All right. Not as needed right now, I guess, if you think about it. You're not going to be killing off too many things depending on what your meta is like. Hey, maybe if you're running against a lot of elves or infect and these low to the ground creatures, maybe there's a lot of goblins running around, Electrolyze is sweet. I don't think you need 2 of currently. You can do some adjustments to that. But cost 3, deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 target creatures or players, and you draw a card off it. So it's just, you know, solid stuff there. Izzet Charm is a nice kind of counter spell, damage spell, loot spell. It kind of does it all. It's kind of like a mini mana leak, if you will, that only works on non-creature spells. So counter target non-creature spell unless they pay 2. So can maybe have a little bit extra against like a Tron if they're trying to cast something on curve. Here's 7 for a Karn. Nope, I'm just going to counter it unless you pay 2. You don't have the 2. Sweet. But, you know, the little niche stuff. Deal 2 damage to target creature, or draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Cool. 4 lightning bolts. Makes sense. You know, stab bolt, all that kind of good stuff. 2 mana leak. You know, counter unless they pay 3. 3 remands, counter target spell, goes to their hand instead of into the graveyard, and you draw a card off it. 2 spell snare, counter target spell with converted mana cost 2, sweet. 1, Anger of the Gods, nice little board wipe, deals 3 damage, will exile all the creatures instead of going to the graveyard if they die from it. We talked about our Madcap in there, sweet, and a playset of Serum Visions for this list. Good art for it, Phyrexian Perfection, I love it. Sideboard, you see a lot of one-ofs, and when you're thinking about a control deck that is kind of along these lines, this is going to be pretty consistent across the board for cards that you'd expect to see. Some solid red ones, a couple of extra counter spells in there. So Grim Lavamancer, you know, just extra removal value. If it goes a little bit longer, you can be able to start flinging damage at your opponent, kill off creatures. It's Staticaster, can lock out infect players, can kill off token strategies, works out really, really well. I like that guy a lot. Spreading Seas, you know, if you're playing this sort of Blood Moon effect, you want to kind of shut people off of colors. Hey, they're going to be fetching up those basics early on because they know you got Blood Moon. Well, guess what? That basic that you have is now an island. Sorry you don't run blue in your deck. Enjoy. Counter Flux. Flux, of course, cannot be countered by spells or abilities, and counter target spells you don't control. You can also overload it and counter each spell you don't control. So 2 Dispel, 1 Negate, like we've talked about, extra control in there. We've got 2 Sudden Shock, really sweet card. Does have that split second, so you cannot cast anything or activate any abilities while this is on the stack. Deal 2 damage to target creature or player. Oh, you're running Infect, and you want to try to save that guy with your Vines of Vastwood. No, not going to happen. Here's my Sudden Shock. Sorry. Vapor Snag, sweet card. You know, turn something to their hand. I like it. Even against like Death Shadow and stuff like that. Hey, they get down pretty low. They're at 3 life or something like that. Boom. You can bounce one of their Death Shadows, stay alive a little bit longer. They'll lose a life, and hey, Snap Bolt, kill them or something like that. So, Keranos, I love Keranos a lot and really fits in well with this sort of deck. If it needs to be a kind of longer, grindier matchup, this is a great card to have. Cost 3. Basically, you're going to either get an extra draw off of it, or just deal 3 damage to our creature or player. Seems pretty sweet. Extra Anger, and we got a Vandal Blast here for specific artifact removal. So, you know, has hate, has counter magic in there, and then just has this way to make a big giant dude for 4 mana. So it's a fun deck, very dependent on the meta though, something you guys have to be careful of. Because of the enchantments, like Blood Moon, if you're running some enchantment removal, that works really well. Hey, if you've got artifact removal, cool, they paid 4 mana, played Platinum Imperium, then you just use your artifact removal and kill it off. You know, seems great. Most of the lists are not running more than 2 or 3 Platinum Imperiums, and usually it's 2 to 3 Madcap. So here I want to show you guys one more list that is a little bit more control-y. Just keep that in mind on ways you want to run things. So this is a little bit less dedicated to the Blood Moon strategy, but more dedicated to just overall control. It's like control splashing hate, if you will. You see double Madcap Experiment and only 1 platinum for this list. So again, that's kind of the name of the deck, the Madcap Moon, Madcap Imperium, whatever you want to call it. But this list is running a Goblin Dark Dwellers, which is a really sweet card. Costs 5 mana though, so you do have to keep that in mind. But 5 mana for a 4/4 with menace, so cannot be blocked except for by 2 creatures. When he enters the battlefield, you can cast target instant or sorcery card with confirmed mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. So that seems pretty sweet. But why is the big draw to run it? And we'll talk about that for our draw spell that is available there. And we got that nice little combination going between that. Snapcaster, like we saw before, running 3, so we can kind of sneak in that Dark Dweller in there as well. 3 clicks still, and running 1 Jace, Architect of Thought. So Jace does really well of kind of blanketing your opponent's team, giving them -1/-0 whenever they try to attack. Also, you can neg 2, reveal top 3 cards. Your opponent puts them into 2 different piles, and you choose what pile goes to your hand. So pretty nice. The other one goes to the bottom of your library. So again, just kind of extra value off the Jace. I really like Jace, Architect of Thought for these kind of control-based strategies that are out there. Like the blue-white control is a nice one to have it in as well, but we'll save the blue-white one for a later date. So shrunk down on our Blood Moons to add an additional cryptic here. You know, still having the Electrolyze, an extra Is It Charm for this list. You expect the Bolt, there's a Mana Leak, Remans. Added in the Spell Pierce main board. I like that style. I think that's pretty good. Non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. Seems good. Double Spell Snare still in here. And of course our Serum Visions, Madcap Experiment. So what is the draw for the Dark Dweller combination? Ancestral Visions. Love it. So suspend for 4. Hey, turn 1, suspend it. Or turn 1, I'm going to be casting Serum Visions. You know, you're going to have a turn 1 play pretty much with this deck. But if you've cast it after those 4 turns, cool, I'm going to draw 3 cards off this and then draw for turn. Now, it's turn 5 or so, you know, depending on how it is. Cast Goblin Dark Dwellers, cast Ancestral Vision for free. So there is that little nice combination because it costs 3 or less. Well, guess what? Ancestral Vision, 0 converted mana cost. So have fun with that, guys. So I really like it. If I was going to be playing the Madcap Moon, I'd probably be playing closer to this version because I love that interaction with Goblin Dark Dwellers and Ancestral Visions. The sideboard's also pretty sweet. Bedlam Reveler, you know, 3/4. You could see, wow, that guy is pretty expensive there. But he costs 1 less for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. Does have prowess. And when he enters the battlefield, discard your hand and draw 3 cards. So just kind of a nice reload thing if that happens later on. Thing in the Ice, big fan. Love the card. You know, nice little blocker. And hey, it's a 7/8 that bounces all other creatures, other horrors, if you non-horrors. So all horrors hang out. Threads of Disloyalty. Enchant only a creature with a converted mana cost 2 or less. You control and train a creature. Well, let's think about what decks are running around that have a lot of creatures that cost 2 or less. Maybe these Death Shadow lists. Death Shadow costs 1. Tarmogoyf costs 2. Yeah, that seems like a pretty good way to go about stealing things for 3 mana. Ceremonious Rejection. You know, again, based on the meta, if you're running into Tron, if you're running into any Eldrazi that are running around, this works out great. 1 blue, counter target color, spell. Sweet. There's all those annoying Tron stuff that they've got with their Planeswalker, with their artifacts. Hey, this works out great against Affinity. Hey, this works out great against those Thought-Knot Seers, Reality Smashers, all that stuff. Extra control, if you will, to dispel. One's the P and Kira in the board instead of the main. Opted for the Goblin Dark Dweller instead. 2 anger in there. And like we talked about, Vandal Blast, destroy target artifact you don't control, and then you can overload it. So if you're looking for a kind of hateful deck, like a prison-based deck, but still want to play blue, still want to counter stuff, this is the way to go, guys. Have some fun. Make a big dumb dude on turn 4 for 8 mana, pretty much. You're just like, alright, here's Madcap Experiment. Awesome. Now I'm going to get this big old dumb guy. Seems like a really fun way to be playing. Add some hate, add some counter magic. So definitely something to think about if you guys are going to be starting to play Modern more often and want this sort of deck. Again, it is very dependent on what your meta is like, because there are times where it's like, alright, cool, I've got Blood Moon, but I don't have any threats on board. You know, I've got these counter magic, counter spells now and things like that, but hey, you have your creatures already on board. I'm having a hard time dealing with it. So that's kind of, the Madcap Experiment is a nice way to push the power level of the deck a little bit more. Has a nice finisher, if you will. We talked about ways to interact and deal with the deck. Again, 4 mana. You still have to wait till turn 4 before you get to cast the Madcap, and by then you might have some answers out, might have saved up some artifact removal. That's the way to go. Be careful, the Blood Moon can be hateful. You will have to make sure you have some ways to deal with that. Otherwise, if you can land a threat and they aren't able to counter it, and just start chipping away at him before he gets the Platinum Imperium, that's a good way to go. So if you're playing quick route, the other thing is if you have disruption, Thoughtseize, Inquisitions, things like that, to kind of pick apart their hand a little bit, that'll make a big difference, because a lot of it is the sit back, wait, react to what you're doing kind of thing. So if you're able to kind of chip away at them, slowly decrease what they have access to in their hand, it's going to make it much easier for you to deal with them, because they're not going to have a lot of stuff on the ground. So, and that's kind of how it is with these prison based decks, is it's, you know, a lot of kind of, all right, here's my lockout stuff, here's my hate for you, now let me see if I can try to answer what you've got. And then if you're able to eventually land something, get something to stick, they have a really hard time with it. So keep that in mind if you are playing against it. It is something that you'll see from time to time at these bigger events. You know, it's a little bit more niche, a little bit more narrow, but definitely a fun deck to be playing. And a little bit different because, you know, blue isn't always the strongest deck for Modern, but it is a fun deck to play, and you have access to a pretty sweet golem. Who doesn't like golems, right? But that's, you know, a good breakdown of what to expect when you guys run into the Madcap Experiment deck, or Madcap Moon. If there are any suggestions you guys have, let me know, as I'll try to keep improving this series for Modern Meta Breakdown. If there's a specific deck that you'd like to see, let me know as well, because I'll be happy to start making a video on it. Like I said, the suggestions have been great. We're going to keep going through and pulling different decks to showcase each and every week, because this is the continual thing that we're going to be doing on Thursdays. Monday is still our other gaming aspect. We've been doing Minecraft stuff. I'm going to start doing a little collab series with Silvar Gaming for our Hearthstone stuff. We're going to come up with stipulations to do and record up videos. Our first one is going to be, you cannot cast a spell until you have 10 cards in your hand. So get 10 cards in your hand, cool, I can play spells this turn. Alright, now I have to wait until I get 10 cards again. Then, okay, got 10 cards in my hand, cool, I'll dump a couple cards, and nope, now I gotta wait until I get 10 cards again. So pretty sweet little way to play, just a little fun stipulation. We're going to start with standard before we go into the wild aspect. And so, you know, that's some of the stuff we're doing. Again, Modern Magic Mondays is every single Monday over on Twitch and YouTube. If you've missed any of the stuff, I am posting it up at the end of the video as well for you guys to be able to see the links and hop over there and subscribe and follow and do all that kind of good stuff. But that's going to do it for tonight's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next game.